The Voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us your perspective.
Welcome to Perspectives On, where we're giving the world a voice. I'm Lara Lane White, your host. As we open tonight's monthly segment on food security, as usual, I am reminded of the late radio host Paul Harvey's creation motif. It was a speech given back in 1978 to a group of farmers where he opens with, "And on the eighth day, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker." It is the responsibility, some would say the obligation of all of us to act as stewards, caretakers, spiritual beings living out this natural experience of life to govern ourselves responsibly and in the management and enjoyment of the land entrusted to us. Well, tonight, I brought together a few pioneers, leaders in the field, setting the example as forerunners of what is beginning to be, to some, a new frontier in the food chain. So I'll start with Anita and Thomas Robinson. Will you just start us off by introducing yourself? Tell us about yourselves and tell us about what you do and toot your horn.
Hello, everybody. We're happy to be here. I'm Anita.
I'm Tom.
And we run a small farm in Spotsylvania County in Virginia. It's called Botanical Bites and Provisions. We specialized in vegetables. We like to say we grow everything from asparagus to zucchini. We also do cut flowers. We are also beekeepers. Wow. And we have a small apiary. And recently we branched out into doing natural cosmetics, incorporating beeswax and honey in our products. So we're really delighted to be here and looking forward to sharing. Rob, do you have something to add?
Not a lot. I think she hit it all. One of the things that we did, as she had talked about, was with the beeswax. This was a value-added product because we just got into the honeybees just to provide honey. But we found that there was a huge market available to do lip balm, soaps, and things like that using value-added products. And so we tapped into that market also. So, you have to think outside the box. You can't do what your granddaddy used to do. You have to think outside the box when you're farming.
And this allows us to farm year-round with the value-added products. And the other thing that I wanted to add is there are grants out there. We tapped into a grant through rural development that helped us with the natural cosmetics. The first grant that I wrote was for a $43,000 grant. And then the second one, the first one was the feasibility study. Just because you have an idea, you want to make sure it's feasible and launchable so that you can make money. And then the second one was the actual productivity of the grant. And that was a $75,000 grant. They're both matching grants, but any free money is free money.
Mama bringing home the money.
That's some good stuff. Reverend Daylay, why don't you, for those that don't know you, why don't you introduce
Okay, well, I'm Rev Daylay. I'm an author, I'm a pastor, and basically I'm really called to help communities be more resilient, and I do that in a variety of ways. This evening I'm going to talk mostly about my work with soil and souls. I began organic gardening in the 1970s at UC Riverside. I raised my children on medicinal herbs. While I was being ordained in the United Church of Christ, I also was certified as a spiritual herbalist with the Econ Spiritual United Order. When I did my Katrina response work in New Orleans, that's when I was introduced to the discipline of permaculture. So learning how to organize our homesteads so that it uses less energy and so that it regenerates itself. And I found that there's a lot of spiritual principles in that. I have found that in order for our people to really get back to the earth, we have to heal from some of our trauma. And so that's why I have Soil and Soul. I found that, we have to re-energize that joy. And so what I have is a lot of spiritual programs related to that. I'm working with my Mi'kmaq heritage in bringing sacred geometry into how I grow my herbs, because I'm growing in a way that I will not have to use fertilizers. I will not have to water because I've set up the land to regenerate itself. And so that's a tradition that we need to reclaim and restore. And we'll talk more about that later.
All right. Celeste, why don't you?
Grand evening. My name is Celeste Lomax, and I steward the land at the Browns Mill Urban Food Forest, which is 7.1 acres. There's going to be fruits, vegetables, shrubs, herbs, nuts, all that good stuff. I steward mostly over the herbs, the medicinal herbs. I started off as a holistic health and wellness coach, teaching those that are addicted to alcohol. I graduated from there to making my all natural products for my hair because I got tired of paying for all of those expensive conditioners and shampoos and things for my hair. So I started making natural things, and I've graduated from making hair products to actually growing my medicinal herbs and making medicine with them. I have an allergy medicine that I make with teas, herbal teas. I also make a herbal tea that will put you to sleep. I also make tinctures with catnip and mullein, things to open up your chest and your congestion and your immune system. So everything that I grow at the Urban Food Forest, and I have space at Wawa, and I have space at my home. So I have 3 growing spaces, and I use everything that I grow to make my medicinal herbs and my salves and my tinctures.
Awesome. That's some awesome stuff. I'm in awe. We were talking before we went on air about how farming is such an ongoing learning experience, even for those who are season growers. But for someone like myself, who is very new and very green to farming, to growing, everything is such a wonderful. Everything is just so awesome to me. For those of you who follow me on Facebook, earlier this week I posted some pictures. I posted an on-site video where I was harvesting collard greens and black-eyed peas, and I just thought that was the most amazing thing in the world. And everybody's like, "Oh, girl, you late." So, it's a new horizon for me, and I'm having the time of my life. Let's get into the questions, because I know a lot of my viewers want to hear your perspectives on, of course, how the pandemic is impacting what we do or what you guys are doing in your respective fields. There's one question that, we've all been watching the news, but what's your perspective on food security and the livelihoods of those at risk during this pandemic? I mean, what is your take so far? I mean, this has never happened before. It's a new thing, and so how is it impacting what each of you are doing? Who wants to go first? Just jump in.
Well, I can talk about how things are different for us at the Browns Mill Food Forest. Last year, we had volunteers that were helping us tend the land. We had over 900 volunteers that visit the area. Because of COVID, we now can only have 10 people at a time coming in. They all have to wear their mask. They have to bring their own tools, their own gloves. We have to keep the social distancing. So with that being said, we have a lot of work that needs to be done that we're not having a hard time getting it done, because it is getting it done. We're just not doing half as much of the work that we did last year that we're doing this year. So COVID really has affected the work that we've done. We haven't been able to plant anymore. Like the garden can continue their planting, but we can't continue our planting because the area where I'm at, most of it is ground food. They're not in beds. So we have to, like on my area, every time that I weed, I have to mulch. If I don't mulch, then those weeds will keep coming back every week. By us keeping things organic, we have to either use tools or we have to use our hands. Most of it is hand done, which means we need a lot of help. But we're getting it done. It's just COVID has made a big difference.
I think what has happened for us up in upstate New York, there are a lot of herbalists in these small towns, and we have joined and formed a couple of mutual aid networks. One of the first things I did in setting up the nursery up here was to gather seeds and distribute seeds, because it's important for people to be able to start learning how to grow their own and to start forming small groups, in their own neighborhoods. And so we've become a seed distribution hub. The other thing is that our herbalists are on the phone every week discussing our remedies, because people don't have the money to, constantly be going to the hospital or going to the doctor. And so we're discussing remedies, and we're discussing the different ways that people can apply, particularly the teas and the tinctures for respiratory conditions. And so that's how we have responded, is to really focus on respiratory conditions and growing more of those kinds of herbs and making sure people know how to use them.
What we've done on our farm is we made a commitment, because we know that brown and Black people are hurting during this pandemic. So we have united with the local food banks, and we've committed to donating 12,000 pounds worth of vegetables. And we usually take a drive on Fridays and make some awesome deliveries of a lot of our fresh produce. So that's one of the things we've been doing. And we've also been working with people in our community, teaching them that, growing food is not hard. It's, a lot of people say something else is the oldest profession in the world, but farming is the oldest profession. If we look at the Bible, Adam and Eve were the first farmers.
Right.
And they were the caretakers of the earth. Yes. So as good stewards, it's incumbent on us to be involved in our community, to lend that extra hand when we have that abundance. We do have a 10-acre farm. We do have 3 high tunnels. So we're able to, give back to the community, and it gives us great joy in doing it.
And some of the things we've done was up front, we used plastic mulch and we used ground cover, because there's just the 2 of us and we do not want to do weeding. Yes. So we set everything down straight up at, and it's labor intensive at the beginning, but during the rest of the growing period, you're gonna love it, because you're not out there pulling weeds. You're just harvesting. Right. So we use a lot of irrigation systems. We use plastic mulch, and we also use the ground cover, and we grow a different variety of everything through that. Some of the things that we've noticed because of coronavirus is that marketing has changed for us, and we no longer just have people come by and pick up stuff. We actually market more now to businesses. And because we can deliver more things to businesses than just sitting there all day waiting for someone to come by. So, and then when people come by, you're worried, because what are you doing? You're grabbing your mask. So, so these things are things that concern us. And we found, Anita and I often joke about this, how when people drive by, when they see us in the fields, they don't hit the brakes, they hit the gas. Because no one wants to go and work in the fields. And we found that we've also had to change some of the things that we've grown. We found that we love string beans, or at least I do. She calls them my gold. But we find that they're labor intensive, and things that are labor intensive require a lot more of your time. So we have to grow things that don't require more of our time, but are more productive. We loved beets. I love beets. She doesn't like them that much. But the problem with beets is you either love them or you don't. And when I talked, I was also the past president of the NAACP, and I talked to a lot of young men about beats, and they said we love them, but they were talking about Dr. Dre's headphones. We're all talking about something, but we're using a different language here. So we found that a lot of things that we could grow well, we had to stop growing because we couldn't market them. And marketing is just about everything. If you can't market what you're producing, then you're not going to stay in business.
I think that's absolutely true. That's why we always start with the market, even before we put our crops in the ground. And that's what we're working with our young adult leaders to go into their communities, find out what the people are eating, so that when we put our food or herbs, whatever it is we're growing in the ground, we're growing it biodynamically, which means that we're growing diverse number of crops in the same space. That's another way to cut down on weeding. You know, nature does not tolerate a void. So nature is not going to tolerate, 8 inches of bare soil. So we help her out. We put the clover down. We have a lot of different ground covers. Sometimes squash is a ground cover for taller plants. And so we layer our plants following the 7-layer forest system. Because we find that when you get 7 layers of plants growing together in the same space, that's when the regeneration occurs. That's when the plants start to fertilize themselves. And so you spend, like he said, you spend a lot of time in the beginning with planning, making sure that plants are complementary, because there are some plants that don't like to be next to each other, just like some people. Okay, and you have to take care of that in the beginning. But if you spend that time marketing and planning your plants and your market, like you said, there is less labor, as you move into the season. And so we're always looking at, just like you look at 7 generations down the way, that's how you should plan your human family. Well, your plant family needs 7 generations going up. And so that's how we manage.
So 2 questions, and this is not. This was not on the. We didn't talk about this earlier, but it's easy for you. I'm sure for the 2 of you to answer. Mrs. Roberson, you said something earlier about caretakers, that we're all caretakers. I know I said something about that, but there's a new phrase trending, and that's earth keepers. So and Reverend Dele, you are.
I'm an earth keeper.
Could you define, what is the definition of an earth keeper?
An earth keeper is one who follows the indigenous ways of relating to the earth. And so you include the spiritual dynamics of the plants and the animals, the elements working together. You're more conscious of the seasons. And I think really the spiritual element, one of the ways that I deal with my earth keeping is with sacred geometry. And so I'm looking at the layout of the garden as it relates to spiritual energies, and really the way life unfolds itself. So in terms of caretaking, we've learned a lot of ways of taking care of the earth that we found out actually tears it down. And so we're having to relearn traditions. And that's why the food forests are really such a good idea. There's a food forest in Morocco that's 2,000 years old. No one tends it. All you have to do is go harvest the fruit. Okay? Because that's the way God intended for us to grow food, was in a garden, not on a farm or a plantation. Okay? And that word that we all often translate as to till and keep, that Hebrew word is actually, it's la'avad and lishmur. La'avad means to serve. So we're actually supposed to serve and preserve the earth. Just like Joshua said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's that same word that has been translated to mean till in some of our translations. So changing our relationship.
Awesome. Now there was another term that Mr. and Mrs. Roberson used, you said you have high tunnels. And for, I don't know if I'm saying that word correctly, high tunnels. For those of my viewers who don't really understand, who may be new to it, could you define what a high tunnel is?
You want to talk about it?
Yes. A high tunnel is a plastic building. And what happens is the NRCS, then they will finance these buildings if your farm is registered. And they'll come in and they'll build these high tunnels, and they come in different sizes. And we started with a 20 by 40, and the latest ones we did are like a 36 by 90. And in those high tunnels, we have irrigation systems set up to irrigate different beds. And we've raised everything in a mushroom compost because that allows us to get a better pH. We also we consider more science. So we do have our soil tested every year by Virginia Tech. And what they do is they check the pH of our soil. They check us for phosphorus. They check the nitrogen, all the things that we need. And when we go out there in the field, and if you dig a hole and you don't see any worms, then you got problems. So, we like to keep our soil rich. So we use these testing procedures to guide us and let us put things into the soil to keep a good pH, because the pH of the soil, especially, it depends on what you're growing. If you're growing fruit like plums or something like that, then you need a pH of about 4.0. But if you're growing string beans and tomatoes, then you need a pH of at least a 7. So all these things we have to keep into consideration on what we're growing, so that we can produce the maximum amount. So we take a look at our soil, and I have to agree with Reverend Deli. I do. We have put the cover crops like the clover and the rye and all those things, and then we get into a big argument because it's so beautiful that she doesn't want me to cut it.
And also,
these are for everything.
That's right.
Yeah.
The high tunnels also allow us to have an extension on our season and allow us to grow for longer periods of time.
Yeah, and we are able to fertilize when we do the high tunnels, because each bed, and one of our high tunnels has 21 different beds in it. So we're capable of growing 21 different varieties of whatever it is we want to grow. Some things require irrigation every day, while others don't. So everything in those high tunnels has its own irrigation system and valves. So we don't have to water things, and we're able to irrigate, and we're able to deliver nutrients through our fertilizer system, because we do use, we use fertilizer, but we use organic fertilizer. And we also plant using Epsom salt and baking soda at the base of our plants, the tomato plants, to make them sweeter. So there are different things that we do, and it takes a little bit more time, but the product, it speaks for itself.
So I looked up high tunnels, and they look kind of like hoop houses that don't have the other ends, or the ends closed in. Okay. So,
so the difference between a high tunnel and a greenhouse is just that a greenhouse is usually considered a glass building.
Right.
And these new plastic structures, hoop house, high tunnels, hoop house usually means it's not as tall as a high tunnel. High tunnel, the reason they made them that size was so you could drive a tractor through it.
Right.
Okay. And I know.
I didn't know.
Yeah. And now I will say this: high tunnels are good, but we're not going to use them because the people who give them to you for free want you to only grow in the ground. And I grow multi-layers. Okay, so I grow several. So that's against their rules. So I have to go to a different source, for my particular structures. But it's all the same structure. It's just a matter of how do you want to grow inside.
Gotcha. It's very fascinating to try to pay attention, make sure that you have the right pH, and really get a soil test. And for those who don't really know, You can always call your county extension services or a
Right.
lot of the universities, which I'm learning about now. A lot of the universities have what they call extension services, where it's where their main purpose is to come out and
Right.
help you
For free.
for free. That's correct. That's correct.
Mhm.
So I'm learning about that, and we'll post a lot more information about extension services in the coming weeks. Miss Celeste, were you trying to say something? I'm sorry.
That was the high tunnel was a lot a lot like the hoop house that we had just built here. So I'm really taking a lot of, even though I'm not taking notes, I'm mentally taking notes. Um,
I
this
appreciated them talking about the mushrooms because the mushrooms also, in addition to making your soil rich, the mushrooms also have properties that help them to remediate toxic soil. And so that's one of the things that we're teaching our leaders is specific mushrooms will transmute oil. Specific mushrooms will take the lead out of your soil. So there's different things that you can grow to remediate your polluted environment while you're waiting on folks to do the right thing. So you don't
That's a great example. I know that Celeste. I know at the food forest, we did talk about some things that we could do, some remedies for in our own situation with that. Were you trying to expound on that?
I just wanted to talk more about on how the food forest started before I even got there. So a lot of the things that we're talking about was not done, like the pH of the soil, which I'm finding out. One of the things that we do have a lot going on that space though. We do our own composting so that we keep everything organic. We have bat boxes for the mosquitoes. We have 3 different beehives for pollination and honey making. We do have the drip irrigation also, but the thing that we did wrong is they did all the planting before they did the irrigation. So the things that I'm learning in this food forest is what to do and what not to do.
Right.
Because I think a lot of the things that I am doing now that if it was done in the beginning, it would have saved me a lot of hours and time for volunteers that I'm needing now if things were done right in the very beginning. But it's a learning. I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong. It's just a learning process as we move forward. Because we're like the Reverend here, we have different layers also. We have 7 layers. The
right.
grass, the trees, the fruits, the nuts. So yeah, it's all one big happy family, right?
That's it.
And it's definitely a work in progress. We are learning as we go, kind of like, jumping off the ledge and building your wings on the way down.
That's it.
And so we will get there. There's the food forest, Reverend Daly, that you spoke about in Morocco. I think you said it was 7,000 years old.
2,000.
So, 2,000. So now it's at a level where you just go in, nobody's tending to it. So hopefully,
but it even starts, I would say, it doesn't take that long, within 10 years.
Oh yeah, I understand that. Right. I understand that. So hopefully, with some good planning, now that we're kind of on the right track, hopefully Atlanta's food forest will get to definitely try to get to that level. I want us to move on now to talk about I'm sorry, we've talked a lot about how we are cultivating the food, and you guys have certainly brought some good stuff to the forefront in terms of educating us on how on some key things, the soil being one of them, definitely. And Reverend Daly, what you said about planning, the careful planning of how and what you're going to plant.
Together.
Now, there is what we call a food chain, and a lot of people don't really understand, how the food chain works. And so, one day I'm going to learn how to display things, while we're talking, so my viewers can understand what we mean by food chain. But one of the things that the pandemic has brought to the forefront of businesses in our food chain. And so for a while, back in March and April, we had some availability issues that went on, and we saw food prices elevate as a result of that. What I would like for you guys to talk about is just to kind of give your perspective on why that happened and how do you see a reversal of that in the near future? Because it's looking pretty bleak in terms of how soon we'll get back on track. But what is it that you guys see in terms of the food chain and the weaknesses of the food chain? Anybody?
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
In the 1920s, 1930s, 1940s, there were almost 1 million Black farms. Now there are only maybe 45,000 or something like that Black farms, and everything is dwindling. And the prices of the food is doing nothing but going up because the demand is there. The population is increasing, so the demand is there. So we've got to be good stewards. I don't see the demand decreasing, but I do see the property decreasing because more people are getting more houses and apartments and what have you. So the farms are disappearing, to be quite honest, but the demand for the food is not. So we're seeing a lot of different things take place. We're seeing a lot of our demand, to be quite honest, came from South America. We relied on South America to grow a lot of the things that we have, but now we're finding that we'd rather have things that are homegrown. We'd rather have vegetables from our own community. There are some dynamic things going on worldwide, and there's a lot of things we can't predict, especially with this pandemic virus that's beating up our demand, and it's also tearing down our supply chain. There's just it's really hurting us in many different ways. So the demand for the food is there.
But I also think that with this pandemic, it's opened up people's eyes. I think this is the first time I went to shop for seeds, and
that's true.
There weren't any. So I think people are realizing that, hey, we've got to get serious about owning our own food and learning how to grow our own food, because it shouldn't be a lost art. We came from the people that supported this country and fed this country for many, many years. So I think we need to start going back to our land grant colleges. I know Virginia State University has an outstanding small farm outreach program where they'll teach anybody how to grow food. We're mentors for the program. If you're in our area, look us up. We'll be happy to share what we know. And I'm sure all the participants, on this program right now will do the same. But we've got to learn to control our destiny through being able to house and feed ourselves.
And Black Americans, to be quite honest, our power is not in producing, our power is in purchasing. Where would Nike be? And they found this out when Rosa Parks got off that bus.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, when everybody started walking, all of a sudden they had to lay off the white bus drivers because there was no one paying their salary. So our power is in our purchasing. It's not in producing, but we've got more Black businesses now than we've ever had, thank God. But our power is still in the way we purchase. So we have to look at what we do and how we purchase
and change our mind.
I think that this pandemic has opened up. I'm actually applauding the failure of the food chain because it was not set up to serve communities. Okay, right. It was set up to serve all that food that's grown in the middle of the country. Is not even grown for people. It's grown for animals and it's grown for fuel. Okay, all that corn and soybean is not grown for us to eat. It's grown for this other purpose. And really? That's why you have these difficulties. California could feed the entire country by itself. Okay, I lived in California. That's where I first started learning how to grow. And I was amazed every year. You would go up and down the highway where the farms are, and you would see all these trucks out there where they were getting ready to plow under their fields. They were paid not to sell their produce. Okay, so we have a system that is not set up to serve us. And so we need food sovereignty. Okay, we need to own our food. We need to own the distribution of it. We need to own the producing. We need to own the packaging, the processing. All of that, we talk about the food chain, all of those are parts of that food chain. And what's happening now, I'm really applauding the young people are starting these urban farms, and they are creating their own food supply chain. They are supplying each other. The state of Vermont is food sovereign. Okay, it used to be people would laugh at Vermont because you have all these small towns tucked away in the mountains, but they have gotten together and they are circulating what they produce so that they can benefit from it. That's what we need to do. Get several urban farms, 10, 12 urban farms, connect with 4 or 5 rural farmers in the area. You will have your food. I think, again, when we plant our gardens, we think, lettuce and tomatoes. We're not thinking, well, where's your protein? Okay, where's your grains? You need all of that for, a nutrient-rich diet. And we can grow those things. We've been taught to think as hobby farmers and hobby gardeners. Okay, so we need to look at, okay, what nutrition do we need? We need those sweet potatoes, okay, protein. We need all those protein sources. Maybe you can't have cows in the city, but you can have cows in the country. And so the things that you can grow in the city, grow them, and then let's circulate amongst ourselves. Let's get our faith communities involved, because our faith communities own land. Okay, so our food banks, we should not be buying food, for the food banks. The faith community should be contracting with farmers, whether they're old farmers in the country or they're young farmers in the city. Okay, we need to start thinking collectively like we used to. Okay, so we need to reclaim a collective mindset. And for this pandemic is showing us that none of us can exist in isolated, silos, and we can't exist without a relationship with nature. We can't just forget, that nature has a cycle, it has seasons, and we have to orient ourselves so that we're operating with it rather than fighting against it. And so that's where some of that tradition needs to come back. This is a huge Sankofa moment, right? In order to move forward, we got to take a step back in tradition. It says, go back and fetch it. There is no shame in picking up something you have lost. Okay, we know what we've lost. We need to go back and get it. And we're going to have to work with new systems. That's the thing. The system that we have was not designed to serve us, so it needs to fall down. Okay, we just need to hurry up and get in place. Okay, we need to learn all those different components. The brother in Chicago, Otis Moss, he has the most complete food system that I know of that's run by a Black person in the country. Because he has not only the farmer's market, he has a farm that he's putting together. He has all the distribution.
That's awesome.
And so those are the skills we need to learn.
And I like what the Pan-African Church is doing as well up in South Carolina. They're doing some awesome things as well. So where do we see this going? I mean, we've identified, that we are conditioned to think as purchasers, but for
we need to be producers.
We definitely need to be producers, right? So for the greater community, where do we see this going? Because right now, we're seeing lack of food availability. We're seeing that this country is dependent upon the big producers, especially when we talk about meat. So what's it going? What's the prognosis? What's your
What I want to try to do at the Browns Mill Food Forest is get a Black farmers market going on in that area. We have farmers markets, you know, in the rural wider areas, but we don't have not one Black farmer market. Oh, we do have Patchwork, which is on the west end side of Atlanta, Georgia. But Atlanta, Georgia is going to actually be a city within a forest. I know where I work at, Trees of Atlanta has planted thousands and thousands of trees. We do have a lot of community gardens popping up everywhere, which is why I was thinking of having a Black urban farmers market in our area, because we don't have one. That way we can put money back into what start the sustainability and the equity piece all at one time. Mm-hmm. Sustainability will be able to feed us with all the food that we're growing, and the equity piece will be the farmers bringing their vegetables and fruits and herbs and everything to the farmers market to sell their food. So it's, to me, I think having a Black farmers market in Atlanta, in that area, Browns Mill area, will be a win-win situation for all of us in that area.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, and we've all heard of some of the Black communities. They call them food deserts, because there is no supermarket. There is nothing there but 7-Eleven
selling potato chips.
Yeah. You know, there is a problem. There is a problem.
Yeah.
I think whenever we've been in this situation that, you know, we've always looked to the cooperative business model. There's a woman that wrote a book, Jessica Nemhart Gordon, and she wrote a book called Collective Courage. And it talks about the cooperative business movement within the Black community. And what's interesting about that book is it starts in the 1700s with Richard Allen, who was a pastor. And as I looked through that book, most of her examples were actually church examples, okay, of how faith leaders understood that we had to circulate our money within our own community, and they came up with different business models to help us to do that. And so that's kind of my prognosis, is that we need to look at, you know, geographically, we've gotten away from the neighborhood church. Okay, because of suburbanization, you know, the churches, you know, you go cross town, you know, you're not related to the people that you are in proximity to. And somehow we're going to have to shift that dynamic and start to be our brothers and sisters keepers. We're going to have to know who's to the north of us, who's to the west, who's to the south, who's to the east. And that's going to have to define how our money flows, you know. And if you want your health to be good, you need to know your farmer. You need to know, what are they feeding that animal? You know, do you want to eat what that animal's been eating? So I think it's taking away that, you know, centralization and bringing it back to local control.
You know, when you talk about that,
now, one of the things that, well, I just wanted to say that one of the things when you speak about the church, one of the platforms that I take very seriously is what is the church doing? How is the church? And when I say the church, I mean it's church universally, and I can speak on how the African American church is. What is the African American church's response to what is going on? What is its response to, especially here in the community that I live in here in Atlanta? How has the church responded to us being a part of what they used to say church? They used to say food desert, and now the trend is food apartheid, because just to give some emphasis to the historical aspect. But how the church really responded? Well, we have gotten away. You're absolutely correct, Reverend Daylin. The church has gotten away from that position that it used to hold once upon a time. But what we need to collectively, church leaders need to collectively take their responsibility back. And church leaders, if nobody else, is responsible for being stewards over the earth that has been provided for us as people. And so definitely when you spoke about the church, that kind of got me started on that. And I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Mr. Robertson. Go ahead. What were you going to say?
No. What I was thinking about, it wasn't really pertaining to the church per se. What we noticed was in our community right here in Spotsylvania and Fredericksburg, Virginia, we have this thing called SNAP. I'm not sure if any of you all are familiar with that. That's a federally funded program that allows minorities and other people to buy fresh vegetables and everything. And we applied for it, and they sent us the machine, and we advertised and everything, but there was no business there, and we were wondering, well, what's happening? So we contacted the state, and the state told us that they're actually in our area, they're doing about 1 million a month in SNAP.
What?
Where is this money going? Hello?
Wow.
It's not coming to you all, huh? That's
Everybody come to us.
Hello.
Even though we have it painted on our business cards and everything, we've never had a SNAP customer.
Where is this money going?
I see it on your website. But Mr. Robertson, remember you said earlier that since we've had this pandemic, nobody's putting on brakes. They're putting on the gas.
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't know what they're thinking.
What I've seen in other areas where the SNAP program is working is typically you have to there's this mindset and there's some behaviors we have to change. People have to start cooking again.
Yes.
Okay?
It's the truth.
Because you growing this stuff, they don't really know what to do with it anymore. And so some of the farmers markets have specialized in having cooking demonstrations. And then they give there's a special, 2-for-1 kind of deal where they can get twice as many vegetables. It's another kind of little link in there. I don't know exactly how it works, but the idea is that, they can spend, they don't have to spend as much money to get a large amount of food. But I do think the cooking is an important part of it, and we may have to do virtual cooking sessions. But
something else too is that I'm noticing that with some of the farm to home programs that the USDA is sponsoring, they require the producers to give the box of food, and they have to also supply a recipe or something that use they can actually use it. But again, those programs tend to be very limited in where they are
elite.
I'm glad you said that. There's a little proverb about this homeless man that was laying outside the bakery, and the baker came outside and gave him a loaf of bread, and he said, "I can't take that because it's not sliced." So, it comes a point.
Really?
Where do you draw the line here?
I love it. So I promise my viewers, I promise you guys that we would give, we're going to give a little time to each of you sharing some form of an herbal or home remedy. Because I've talked to some people that frequent this particular segment, and we are just dying. Remember, I told you about how I reacted to harvesting the black eyed peas. I'm dying to hear some special something that you can educate me on in terms of doing something naturally. I don't know. Anybody, y'all start.
Well, I wanted to share a recipe for lip balm. And one of the things that I'm sorry, our telephone is like popcorn.
I know. If y'all were doing this, you'd be like, you weren't calling us.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's for you, Dr. Lorraine. It says spam.
He's a hoot.
So this is just a very basic lip balm recipe. And what you would do is you'd have 1 tablespoon of beeswax, 2 teaspoons of cocoa butter, 1 teaspoon of sweet almond oil, and then 5 drops of whatever essential oil. I like to use lemon balm since it's one of my favorites. And just heat that until it liquefies, and you'll have enough for 2 tubes or 2 containers of lip balm.
So you're saying cocoa butter.
Right.
Okay, now you got to do this for dummies. You got to do lip balm for dummies when it comes to me. Am I actually going to the store and buying some cocoa butter off the shelf, or am I going somewhere like a health food store? How do I get that?
Well, you could go to the drugstore if that's more convenient for you. I usually get mine naturally from Amazon. I try to buy more organic products.
Okay.
You can usually get it at the beauty supply place.
Just
Right.
regular cocoa butter?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
You can find it at Walmart.
See, I'm thinking that cocoa butter is like you got to make cocoa butter. Like, is that you don't do cocoa butter, right? How's that? I don't know. Y'all tell me.
Say that again.
So I'm thinking that you have to make cocoa butter. You can't grow it, right?
No, you don't grow. We don't grow it here in the U.S.
No, that's a tropical.
It's
Probably
a tropical, right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a paste, and it comes in a jar.
And if you don't have cocoa butter, you can probably exchange that for coconut oil.
Coconut oil, okay.
Or shea butter.
Or shea butter.
Shea butter a lot.
Shea butter. Now the shea butter that I have is kind of hard. So how would I melt that?
Right.
The coconut butter would be hard too. It's going to be in a solid form.
That's right.
Okay, now
You got to whip it up. Whip it up and make it soft.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. And so are you going to have that? Do you have that like in a Word document or somehow?
Yes, I can send that to you.
Please do. And I'll
Okay.
share it with the viewers. Okay, go ahead. All right.
Okay, well, my DIY is a antibacterial oregano oil. Oregano oil is a probiotic. It's antifungal, antiviral, and antibacterial.
Okay.
So you would take 1 tablespoon of fractionated coconut oil, 2 drops of the oregano oil, 2 drops of frankincense essential oil, and then 2 drops of lavender oil. You'll combine the ingredients in a roller bottle and then keep it in a dark place for 1 week, and you can use it on topical infections. Do not use it for open wounds because oregano is very, very potent. And you can go on to my website and get 2 more recipes. One is antifungal. That was the antibacterial. And then we have another one. I forgot what the other one was. But anyway, we have all 3 of them. And you can go to Celestial Care Solutions, www.celestialcaresolutions.org. And it's already downloaded on my website. And you can check out all 3 DIY recipes for free.
What was that first ingredient again?
The tablespoon of fractionated coconut oil, which is, I know you're going to ask me, what is that? That is the coconut oil actually that has no taste and no fragrance to it. So that's the kind of coconut oil that you want to get, the fractionated one.
It's usually in a liquid form.
Yes, in a liquid form. It's not the cold pressed coconut oil that people cook with.
And you said their website was celestialcaresolutions.org?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the fractionated,
fractionated coconut oil. And you'll be able to download it too when you get to the website.
Okay. All right. So just go to the website, folks. And I'll make sure that I'm going to also share it. I'll probably go to your website and because I'm going to share that along with Mrs. Roberson's for her recipe for the lip balm. So I'm excited.
Actually, it's a whole presentation, so they can see the whole presentation. And they can find out about the food forest, and it comes with the DIY recipes also.
Okay, cool. All right. Reverend Daylay, share some.
I just want to do something really simple. Just some teas for respiratory, to strengthen your respiratory system. And So I would blend 3 different herbs. One of them is actually is a very common weed in our front yard. It's plantain. Okay, and so you would take your plantain leaves, some peppermint, okay, for the thymol, for the mentholated impact, and then mullein, mullein, is a herb. It's a real furry kind of herb, and that's real good for drying out your mucous membranes. Mm-hmm. And so the peppermint, the mullein, and the plantain, and just mix those leaves together in equal proportions and drink it as a tea. You know, just take a teaspoon and let it steep in a hot cup of water, and or make about a quart of it so that you can drink it throughout the day, so that you would be bathing your lungs in antivirals and antioxidant kinds of things.
Uh-huh. Yes. Now, did you say the plantains are?
The plantain, not the plantain that we eat, not the banana.
See, that's why people like me, you're gonna have to break that thing down.
I'll tell you. I know it, not that. Okay, I don't know why they call it like that, but the Native Americans said they call it the white man's footprint because they said before the Europeans came, it didn't live here, but it's a plant. It has kind of, roundish leaves, and it has really, when it has a flower, it has that tall seed, it has a tall stalk. Mm-hmm. Okay.
How are you, Lorraine?
You said You said
you when you come to
Oh, go ahead. What? I don't know. You said it's in our front yard, right?
Yeah. But you may not recognize it because you mow it down all the time.
It looks like a weed, but I'm going to show you, Dr. Lorraine, when you come out there on Wednesday, plantains are growing all over the place.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're very good for softening the soil. That's what the service that they do they soften the soil. But then also you get your omega-3s from their seeds. Mm-hmm. People don't know that. But the leaf is what we're talking about using for respiratory conditions.
How about that? So I can just grab something out. Once I learn how to recognize it, I can just grab something out that's just growing wild out of my yard.
Mullein grows wild too.
I'm growing mullein now too. So
mullein is excellent. It's very traditional lung, lung-based strengthener.
And so that mullein and those plantains that you're referring to, that grows up in New York where you are.
Yep, and it grows down where you are too. Mm-hmm. And I would put some peppermint in it to give it a nice flavor. Plus, the peppermint has the mentholated. You know how that it opens up the pores and that impact.
Okay.
Well, the mullein is drying out all the mucus. It's drying everything out, and the peppermint is open. So it's working all together.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Lauren, poison oak grows wild too. You be careful now.
I know I need a picture.
Man.
I need a picture because I'll probably.
I did not. I just wrote that down. I'll have a sheet with some pictures on it.
Okay, good. I'll make sure I post those. Because I'm telling you, a lot of my viewers, they're outside. So
and they may not want to pick them where because people put Roundup on their lawns.
That's bad too. Yeah.
So I'm just saying you can grow it, but if you're going to eat it, you need to take better care of it.
Okay, interesting. Now, Mr. and Mrs. Robertson, do you all see those plantains where you are? And the
they know what I'm talking about.
Yes, we do.
Anybody that grows know what a plantain is.
Yeah, because they're usually trying to get rid of it.
Not knowing that it's full of medicinal goodies.
Mm-hmm. Right. That's why you have medicine farmers.
Yes.
And we look at it as weeds.
Right.
They say, oh, it's a weed.
Right.
Okay. No. I never would have known that.
And all around our farm, we got another grant to grow pollinator flowers for the honeybees. So we have a different variety of all different types of flowers that the honeybees love. And, they really help us with produce. After we got them, we noticed an increase in our productivity of our vegetables, our cucumbers, our tomatoes. The honeybees, they help. They really help. And also, it wasn't only the honeybees; it was the bumblebees. The bumblebees too. They're really good pollinators for us. So I encourage everybody to grow as many flowers as you can around your farms because that'll attract the pollinators.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Educate me. You're educating me.
Well, and then too, in terms of the bees, the carpenter bees and the bumblebees, they don't sting. We're more accustomed to the yellow jackets. We're really more accustomed to the wasps that are very aggressive. But there are a lot of bees that just go minding their own business, and they're not studying you.
Yeah.
Right.
Studying them flowers.
You use that word study.
We just got 3 honeybee hives last week. 3 new honeybee hives.
Awesome. Yay.
They do sting.
Yeah, they do.
Well, you're all up in their house. You're taking their.
Right.
Come on now, be fair.
Leave that honey alone.
I'm talking about the bees that are just out there in the field minding their own business.
Yeah,
Right?
Reverend Della, you're so right. When they're in the field, they don't want to sting anybody.
No. If you don't step on them, just
Well,
Yeah, I was harvesting my catnip last week, and there was bees all around me. And I'm like, you know what? I ain't studying y'all because I need to get these catnip blossoms off of this thing. So y'all gonna just have to buzz on around me. And I did not get stung at all.
Yeah.
So they know what you're doing.
I thank everybody for being a part of this. And as usual, I learned a plethora of things from the farmers, and I thank God for each and every one of you, and I'm so grateful for each of you to be a part of this segment on tonight. The information that you have given for folks like myself who are new, and I say farming for dummies, you have absolutely taken me to just a half a step above. Now I'm probably, as soon as we're done with this, I'm probably gonna get on the phone and be on my iPad looking up something, half of what you all just explained to me, trying to understand it and just process it all. So I thank you so much for what you're doing. And we're gonna close out, and I just want to remind everybody that on next week, beginning of next month, we'll go down to 2 shows per month. So we'll be on every other Thursday. But on next Thursday, we'll do a special edition. We will have a show on next Thursday on climate justice. Many of you know that I am currently in the process of becoming a client reality leader, and I'm very excited about that. And so on next week, we'll be talking a lot about what's going on with the land, what's going on with the environment, and we'll have a conversation about that. And that will more than likely piggyback off of what our conversation was about tonight. Mr. and Mrs. Roberson, I love you guys. You have a comedian that you
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity.
We enjoyed sharing with you.
Well, and I hope to have you back on my show. Our next show on food security and farming won't be until September, and I'm thinking that by that time things will calm down harvest wise. Maybe we would have just finished planting, and so we could come back together. I'm prayerful about that. Thank you, Miss Celeste. It's always a blessing. My queen,
Thank you.
The queen, Dele. You are very special, highly respected, and earth keeper. I'm going to start using that word. I'm going to try to encourage everyone to get more educated on that. So on that note, I thank everyone for listening. A special thanks to Keystone Public Radio. And as we leave you tonight, I want to leave you with those special words from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King that whatever affects one directly affects us all indirectly.
Yes.
Good night, everyone. And
Welcome to Perspectives On, where we're giving the world a voice. We are a faith-based social justice forum where individuals give their perspectives on various topics. It's an opportunity to express their viewpoint, their stance, and their angle on justice issues affecting the community and globally. Each episode features guests presenting their perspective on things like climate change, the church, urban farming, and food insecurity, all through a unique faith lens. Come check us out. Give us your perspective.